Forgot to water the plant again.
Okay, hello guys. Welcome to another Mel's podcast where we will talk about adulting mm, that adults don't talk about. Okay, tapi hari ni it's been a long week. It hasn't ended yet. So I'm just gonna read what I wrote. Bukanlah I wrote macam okay, in a way it's my opinion now. So I guess this is the only thing that I can do for now. Aku pun tak rasa lah aku boleh susun apa sangat. So I'm just gonna read what I have organised. Okay. Kecil sangat pula Okay, recently, my family received some unexpected news from someone young. Someone has been part of our lives around us for a very long time. Suddenly passed away. And when something like that happened, I really realized that grief doesn't comes from one family. It doesn't belong from one family only. It affected my family, his family, dia punya kawan-kawan dia punya family, and even in fact people yang ada in dia punya life throughout sekejap je but still remember him, you know. And honestly, benda ni buatkan I realise that honestly, benda ni makes me realize that it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes we only realize how true it is after a sudden heartbreaking like this happens. And what surprised me though is not the news itself, it's not the news only, but also after hearing reactions afterwards. Instead of the first reaction of being, I'm sorry, are you okay? How is everyone? Instead, some people immediately started looking for someone to blame instead of some people immediately looking for someone to blame, looking at the person's choices, looking at the things they had done, and I remember thinking, is this really the first thing that you thought after someone told you they lost their life? And I remember thinking, is this really the first thing we should be thinking about when someone has just lost their life? And this made me think about how quickly we label young people, especially young people who don't fit the version of good that society expects them to be. We call them problematic and troublesome. We say that they are bad influence, and we say that they are wasting their life. But have we ever actually sat down and listened to them and asked what is happening in their lives, especially at their homes, and what they're struggling with or what even they are looking for? Because sometimes when you actually get to know these people, you realize they are not some horrible human beings. They are just young people trying to find someone and somewhere they belong. Some are coming from broken families, some are struggling financially, some don't even have the emotional support that others have, and we have those who take for granted of them just because they don't have one. Some don't even know how to communicate about how they feel, and some are just looking for a place where they are accepted. And I'm not saying this because every decision they make is right. It's not. The consequences of there are always consequences of their actions. There are things that are dangerous and we should not encourage. And the things that there are also things that these young people need to be taught. But there are difference between correcting someone and deciding that they are a bad person. I think adults sometimes forget that. We look at a teenager making bad decisions and immediately thinking, budak ni bermasalah. But how do they get there? Because these children's because these children did not wake up just one morning to suddenly become problematic. Anxiety doesn't necessarily come from one bad day. Depression doesn't necessarily come from one argument. Behavior doesn't suddenly appears out Bad behavior doesn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months, sometimes it's years of things piling up, and that's why I think we need to look beyond this behavior, because behind every behavior there's still a person, and maybe that person just needs a guidance or a boundaries or someone to tell them that what are they doing isn't okay. And maybe deep down this person just needs a little bit of kindness the world from the world that they live in. Imagine if the adults around the struggling child become their safe place instead of another place they feel judged. Okay, tak bukan macam ni. Imagine if the adults sekeliling this problematic child is an adult yang betul-betul nak fix this community. Kalau dia dekat rumah dia ada problem, at least dia pergi, kalau kat rumah dia ada problem, at least dia pergi sekolah, dia tahu dia ada safe place, safe spot where ada adults yang boleh encourage dia to and give them guidance lah. And kalau sekolah tak okay, rumah tak okay, if dia punya relatives are okay, dia akan ada a soft land where kalau dia buat masalah pun, nanti dia tahu they can go somewhere and have a better chance to change. Kita kena ingat that masalah budak-budak and masalah remaja comes from a failed society. And with all of that, would every young person suddenly make a perfect decision? Of course not. But maybe some of them will have a better chance. And I think that is what we sometimes fail to understand. We can't keep asking young people to become better while giving them no safe environment in which to grow. We can't keep saying budak zaman sekarang bermasalah without asking ourselves what kind of environment are we creating for them. Because raising a child, yet again, isn't only the responsibility of parents but a society. It's the responsibility of people around them too. Teachers, friends, relatives, neighborhoods, and the community itself. And something else really stayed with me from what happened when this incident happened, and those who come to show their respects. I saw so many young people that you call from the society yang bermasalah ni. Instead of them, those yang selalu say instead of those adults yang say what they should do, what they should become. And a lot of them are just kids yang often we judge for the same thing. And I thought these are the people society sometimes called problematic. But look at how many people showed up and cried and care for this person just because this person is simply called their friend. And that's what made me realize something. We really don't know someone's entire story just by looking for one part of their life. And we don't know what kind of friend they are, what they done to someone else, and who they helped when nobody was watching. What kind of person, and also what kind of person they are underneath the label that we give to them. So maybe we need to slow down before we judge. I'm not saying we should excuse bad behavior. I'm saying we should see the person before we see the problem. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what will happen to us, and we don't know what will happen to the people around us. And maybe the only thing And maybe the only thing we can really control is how we treat people while they're still here. Be kinder, listen longer, ask more. Don't 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 create assumption. Ask, correct before humiliating, and don't make someone feel like they aren't saving just because they are struggling. Because we never know. The person that we judge today maybe needs just even a tiny salt of kindness from you. And I really believe that no good deeds go unanswered. And maybe not immediately, but maybe not in the way that we expect. But kindness has a way of reaching places we don't even notice it reach. So before we label them as budak bermasalah, we can ask ourselves first: Do we ever give this person a safe place for them to become better? The more that I thought about it, the more I realized that budak-budak budak-budak remaja does not come from them, budak tu itself, but it comes from us yang failed as a society. Before we call them a problematic child, we need to ask ourselves what has happened before they become this version of them. Who was there when they needed someone, when they were struggling, and did they have a safe place to go? Who taught them how to deal with anger, grief, rejection, loneliness, and whatever they are carrying? Because sometimes we expect children to have emotional maturity that even adults that around themselves don't have. And then when we don't know how to handle them, we label them as budak bermasalah, budak liar, ataupun budak tak ada masa depan. Maybe instead of asking kenapa budak ni jadi macam ni, you should ask apa yang jadi dekat budak ni sampai dia jadi macam ni. Because a child doesn't raise themselves. It takes a village to raise a child. So if the child is struggling, maybe the village needs to look at them itself. Budak-budak bermasalah, yet again, I'm saying it, budak-budak bermasalah comes from a failed society. Kita semua. And I don't mean that every bad decision a teenager makes is the adult's fault. No, they still have responsibility for their choices. But if seeing the same pattern, young people feel lost, angry, disconnect, search for belonging, and struggling with their families, struggling financially and emotionally, maybe we need to stop asking why they are so difficult and start asking whether we give them strong enough support to become better. Because it's very easy to judge a child from the outside, and it's much harder to ask ourselves what could have I done differently. And that's all for today.